right. Hello, everybody. I am Lisa Anarino, and we are here to talk about creating belonging wherever you are. So excited to be here to moderate this panel with my awesome colleagues from Capital One. So to introduce myself, I already gave you my name, Lisa Anarino. My pronouns are she, her. I am an ally. I lead the Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Partnerships Program here at Capital One. And for a visual description today, I am a not tall woman with dark brown hair in a ballerina bun, wearing black jeans, zebra print shoes, a mahogany jacket that I am in love with, and a cream top. A little bit of housekeeping very quickly. We're going to take Q&A today. We'd like to do that through the chat so that we have our folks on live stream engaged. So when we get to that point, just put them in there. We'll pull them out for you and we'll get to that. And with that, I'm going to introduce each of my panelists who will share a little bit about themselves, including a time they felt they most belonged. Albert, get us started.
Wonderful. Good evening, good afternoon. My name is Albert Smith. I am the Senior Director for BRG Consulting and Associate Enterprise Enablement at Capital One. I am a Black man. I stand about 6'2". I'm wearing amazingly bright yellow frames. I have on a white polo or poplin with blue jeans and kicks, are sneakers. And when I think about a moment of belonging for me, I think what comes to mind isn't necessarily a moment per se, but an experience of mindfulness. When I have an opportunity to be with my thoughts, when I have an opportunity to introspect and to engage critically with self, is when I feel most connected to the world and to myself, my body, my mind, my spirit. And so that is what belonging feels like for me.
Nice. Hi, everyone. My name is Bruce King Shea. My pronouns are he, him. I identify as a gay, cis male. My visual description, I am wearing a dark blue blazer with a flaming orange pocket square, white shirt, dark blue jeans, and I've been told I have to mention these great shoes that are white patent leather with a whole bunch of vines all over them. Let's see, my role at Capital One, I am an executive on the machine learning team for Capital One credit cards. That means we support all of the different functions of the credit cards. Specifically, it is a multidisciplinary machine learning team, and specifically what I do is I lead a team called Innovation and Engagement, where we have a team of innovation practitioners really helping us deliver human-centric machine learning use cases. Let's see, when have I felt like I most belonged? So I mentioned I'm in an innovation role, which is interestingly enough, because innovation is always about doing something new. So if I'm not pushing against a little bit of the business as usual, the way we're doing things, I'm actually not doing my job. So I think I have a funny relationship with the word belonging, because if I belong, that means I might not be doing my job. And just kind of making sure we're making space for that difference, right? I think, so it's an interesting relationship with that word belonging, which is why I think we have a panel discussing.
Yeah.
Love it. My name is Leah Morlett. My pronouns are she, her. I am a queer woman, and I work as a risk manager for Capital One's credit card division. And I'm a leader for our Outfront BRG, which is our LGBTQ+ resource group. Today, I am wearing black flats that are Rothy's and my favorite, a pair of black pants, a black and white shirt, and to top it all off, black and white layered hair. I am a 5'6" white Hawaiian woman, and I am so excited to be here today. When I think about a time where I feel like I most belong, I feel like I really need to focus on the idea that belonging is different for everyone, right? What makes me feel like I belong is feeling celebrated by the people that love me and the people that are there to support me. So I can share just a very brief story where my current wife surprised me after a soccer game where we met on a soccer team. I was stinky, I was sweaty, I was ready for a beer, and all of a sudden I was engaged. And so the moment just felt so personal and so magical, and we had just this wonderful connection. But what really made me feel like I belonged was going to get that beer afterwards and finding all of our friends and family there, just excited to be around our happiness, just celebrating us for finding our joy. And I feel like that's the space where I feel like I most belong, when people are celebrating my existence.
I love that. I love that so much.
Lisa, would you like to share your own story?
I will share. I will share. So I have been an athlete my whole life, but I never really felt like one, probably because I'm a goalie, and it's like a very solitary existence. But early on in the pandemic, I found this amazing community of men and women. It is a queer-owned female small business in DC called Work, and they have created the most amazing community in DC of people who support themselves on and off the field. And I feel on that field and with these people that I have no limits, and that all of the limits that I ever placed on myself were arbitrary and unnecessary. And for me, that's when I feel like I belong, when I can just be me and achieve. And that's the space that I like to be in. So those of you in DC, find me after. You can come. We push sleds. It's amazing. It's a great community, and we welcome everybody. So thank you, Leah, for giving me the opportunity to share.
Love your story.
Thank you. So I want to dive into this idea of belonging, because Bruce, you touched upon it, right? It's really hard for us to define. It's different for individuals, it's hard for companies, and we want to work through today, what does that mean to each of us, and how can we bring that to our own organizations? And I am nothing if not prepared, so I did a lot of research for this conversation, and I kept coming back to an idea from Brené Brown that belonging is the opposite of fitting in. It's that it does not require us to change who we are. And Albert, I want to start with you. Does this idea resonate with you? How do you feel about this thought from the great Brené that we all know and love?
Yeah, I think I've wrestled with this question of fitting in and never having to change who we are, because it is contextual, right? And when I think about my material existence as a 6'2", 254-pound Black man, I have to wrestle with this notion that my material existence transgresses a lot of spaces, and as a result of transgressing a lot of spaces, I am required to shapeshift, right? I'm required to code switch from time to time. And so in the sense that it is an ideal state, I agree. However, when I think about it practically, I navigate the world as a Black queer man, right? And I navigate a white, cis, heteronormative, capitalist patriarchy, right? And as a result of my existence within the material world, it doesn't afford me the opportunity to belong always. Yet, there are moments when I have experienced belonging, and that notion that Brené calls out does resonate, but it is all conditional. I have to prioritize survival in most often cases over the feeling of wanting to fit in.
Albert, thank you for that vulnerability and for sharing that. Leah, I'm going to come over to you. You have a couple of different ideas about belonging that we've talked about, and I really just want to kick it to you to talk to us about what it truly means for you to belong. You touched upon it a little bit in your intro, but I'd like you to dive deeper for us.
Yeah, thank you. So for me, belonging and feeling like I exist and I matter in the world is about not feeling like my presence is an interruption. It's not about feeling unique to me. It's about being who I want to be and that being okay with everyone. It's about casually mentioning, being with my wife or my BRG work, or even casually mentioning that I don't ever want to parent human children.
It's fair.
Just fur babies. And when the conversation doesn't pause, no one falls silent, there isn't a gasp of air, like, well, not yet, right? You'll learn, you'll figure it out. I feel like I belong. I'm me, and that's okay because you're you too, and we're existing together.
I love that so much. There's a whole other line there that we are not going to go down, but I agree with you, even though I made that choice. Like, yes. Okay? Bruce, I want to shift us a little bit because you and I have talked a lot about belonging and culture, right? And how culture contributes to that idea of belonging in the space that we're in. So take us through what that culture means to you.
Yeah, I think belonging is an interesting concept because it feels that you're looking out and trying to go into a space, right? But I think where we want to go, I'm quite seasoned in my career, so as I look at different opportunities, and the first thing I consider is this a culture that I want to be part of? It's not about, do I belong there? It's, do I think I can thrive there? Do I think I can bring an innovation type thought to this organization? Even if it's different, will they actually say, oh, that's different, but we want to be able to do that? I feel like really understanding the culture is really important because the culture will not change, right? Culture is a very funny thing. Culture change is very, very hard, right? There's that saying that everyone knows, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Yeah. And it does, right? Culture is pretty stable. And the culture is not going to shift for you, right? Like, you're going to have to negotiate it and understand, but you don't have to fit in perfectly, right? It is work. And we want to just know that we have the possibility of doing our best, right? So a part of that is really taking a serious look at the culture of where we choose to spend the majority of our time, right?
Yeah, I love that idea. And Leah, that brings me back to you around, when you think about this culture of the organization, what is it that you look for to know that you can thrive and that you can belong?
Bruce. It's Bruce. I mean, it's just the feeling that, like, I can be myself and I can thrive, and that's what the company or like the department is looking for. I've been at Capital One for 12 years, and I've been in places where I didn't feel like I belonged, and I left, and it was their loss because I dedicate myself wholly to work when I feel like I want to, and that's a loss for them because I moved somewhere that does make me feel comfortable, and when I can feel like I can thrive and be me, everybody wins, right? Like, I win, I get promoted, I feel great about my accomplishments and what I'm doing for the world and for the company, but they win because I'm crushing it for them, right? Like,
yeah.
Word.
So.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
So I used to work at a different company, and I'll just say it was PepsiCo, and I was having I was having a conversation with Indra Nui, who used to be the CEO. And I said, Indra, I'm going to be honest with you, sometimes when I walk into these spaces of the different companies that we work with, there's a lot of white men who are executives, and I kind of feel I have to enter the space. And this is Indra Nui, who is a star CEO. She said, Bruce, you feel weird. What about me? Yeah. I am a woman of color. I come from a disadvantaged background, from a country very far away. I'm a large woman, and I have to go into these spaces. And I thought, oh my gosh, if Indra Nui feels this way, like what's interesting that the dawning on me is we're typically always at some point going to feel like we actually don't fit, we actually don't belong, and we just have to push through and say, we do belong, I do belong, this is the space I'm taking up, I'm going to be this way, and I'm going to be part of this conversation, right? There is an intrinsic selfness that you kind of have to have that is not about them accepting you, it's about you going into this space, right?
Yes. And I feel like Albert said that earlier, right? I mean, it's really about finding a place where you want to be, and if you feel like that place isn't going to accept you, find a new place. Go find your happiness.
Yes, Anne. I recognize and I want to acknowledge that I have positional power too that affords me the luxury of making those decisions. Yes. But we all don't have that, right? And so, not to steal your thunder, Lisa, but I'm interested in hearing from my fellow panelists, what are some strategies then that we can leverage, no matter where we are, in our profession at whatever level we are in our profession, that will allow us to have the boldness to engage. And to your point, I think that if it is worth it, because I agree, our difference is the differentiator, right? Like our uniqueness is the one thing that makes, an organization thrive, right? Like when I come into the space and I bring my perspective, it is my perspective that may be solving for the next big problem that other individuals did not have access to by virtue of where they're located. And so I want to hear, if I could steal your thunder once again, yeah. Lisa, what strategies would you tell someone who may not have positional power? Now, let me also say this, that privilege is something that we both borrow and we lend. And so at some point, we all have some power, right? But for those individuals who may not have the power to be courageous, what would you say to them?
So I'm going to start because I have a very interesting journey with the company. So although I'm obviously important enough to be here with these incredible humans, I started 12 years ago on the phones. I worked midnight to 9 a.m. in our call center, just answering drunk calls, right? And you don't have power. I mean, you don't have any power there. And I worked my way through the call center for years, learning everything I could and adapting to all the different leadership styles you find. And what I found really helped me, and to answer that question, it's finding your people. And then it's identifying when you want to be yourself and when you just want to be an employee. I don't have to bring my whole self to work every day.
Word.
When I do, that's amazing. But if I want to just be a shell, get the job done, and then go home and decompress, that's my choice. And I want to be able to make that choice without anyone looking at me like, you weren't really yourself today. Well, I don't want to be myself, right? I want to be in bed. Yeah. I think that's where I would say the most important thing is. Find your self-awareness and find your people.
And your agency, basically.
Yes.
I hear that. I love it.
Yeah, a little bit maybe to that agency. So a lot of times I am bringing folks from different backgrounds, different disciplines to make sure we're discussing something that no one knows about, the future, right? So currently I work with our analysts and our data scientists and our product managers, and we're really trying to think about what we need to do. And data scientists, maybe to be a little stereotypical, that may be a little bit true, they tend to be introverted, right? They have such deep knowledge on how to solve problems with data, but you put them up against an analyst who went to an MBA school who has the answers all like this, the dynamic is something that really needs to be managed. So what I do is I often talk to my colleagues, my data science colleagues, and say, look, you know so many things that this other person does not know. Your job is to really realize that expertise, that experience, and bring it to the table. I can help you and make space and we make sure that but your job really is to make sure that you realize the value you are bringing, that you have amazing amounts of expertise, but you do have to bring it and show it. And you will realize, wow, I can do this. I do fit. I can be part of this conversation.
Yeah.
I want to work with Bruce.
So
I'm telling you.
So everybody talk to Bruce after and find out how to work with him. I think there was a nice segue because we're really starting to talk a little bit about life at Capital One, right? And the roles that we have and the things that we do to create belonging there. I think y'all have a couple of takeaways already, but we're going to dive in a little bit deeper. Yeah. And if you think about our culture, and diversity, inclusion, and belonging are at the core of that culture, and Leah, you spoke on something that we know to be true through research and conversation, that when associates feel like they belong, they perform better. They're more likely to want to be at work. They find deeper meaning and connection into their work, and they're happier, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to create that belonging for all of our associates and for one another, regardless of our place in the organization. Mm-hmm. We all have the opportunity to do that. And Leah, you do that as a leader for our Outfront BRG. So can you talk about some of the things that y'all do to create belonging for BRG members, but also allies and friends and the other folks throughout Capital One?
Yes, absolutely. And I hope I do, right? I mean, you do your best and you want to make sure you can meet people where they are. So we try to focus really on 3 core components. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the incredible team of people in the room today that help us achieve these goals all of the time. But we really try to focus on 3 major pillars to find a balance for where people need. So we do education, right? We bring awareness. We try to eliminate erasure of certain identities inside of our community. And we try to make sure that if folks have questions, there's a space for them to ask them. Those educational sessions are some of the most amazing that we offer, in my opinion. And we have incredible partners like Out and Equal, PFLAG, right? And they help us facilitate those conversations. We also try to do speaker events that speak to our community members, bringing in keynote speakers, having panels like this one, panels of our associates that can share their experiences. There's so many times in the call center when I first started at the company that I just needed to see me, right? I just wanted to find someone that had my experience, even if we looked nothing alike. And so having those panels or sharing those keynote speakers really helps someone realize they're not an only, they're not just by themselves. And then because who doesn't love a good way to find your people, right? Find your group. We do networking events, right? We try to make sure that folks have the ability to connect with their peers across the enterprise, across the nation, across the globe. You might not have met this person if you didn't dial in to this random coffee conversation on a Thursday afternoon. And they might have changed your life or you might have changed theirs. And so just kind of offering 3 spaces, right? Educate, find someone's other only, and give them a chance to connect with each other. I think that's where we have found the most success with Outfront.
Yeah, I think you all have done an incredible job. And I think the group you put together to come to Out and Equal to learn and bring back the learnings help us create belonging as well. I know for me, it has opened up a whole door of friends at Capital One that I never would have had if I didn't have the opportunity to be here.
Yes. And notes from all those other sessions that I plan on using.
And a list of speakers we want to come in.
Right.
So, and Albert, that brings me over to you, right? You are leading associate enablement. Your BRGs are under your purview. Accessibility. There's so much work that you do on an enterprise level that's really helping to drive belonging for all of our associates, not just one demographic. So can you talk a bit about some of that work and how you're moving it forward?
Sure. So my work is really looking at belonging through the lens of creating ambient spaces, right? The built environment to ensure that our associates are thriving in a way that results in greater productivity, higher return on the organization's investment and things of that sort. And so my primary responsibility is enablement, right? How do I create the conditions for those individuals within my remit, as well as across the DIB function, to engage actively in ways and in service to their various populations. When I think about the specifics of my responsibility, it is to foster our talented and diverse workforce. And to do so through a number of efforts, from increasing our inclusion acumen across the enterprise, vis-a-vis through some of the efforts that Layla Leah has mentioned here just a moment ago, as well as supporting the executive education of our executives as well. And so that comes through a variety of interactions and experiences. I'm looking right now at the accountable executive for our Outfront group right now, and being a resource for Artie. Really helping Artie to think about how to engage at the strategic level and how to leverage his power and his privilege as a VP in our organization to really activate his peers and those above him as well. And so when I think tactically, it is about creating the conditions for other people to actually go out and to do the work, inspire them, provide them with the necessary tools, the competencies, the experiences that would ultimately result in creating a belonging space, an ambient space. From an accessibility perspective, that means doing evaluations and assessments of our built environment to ensure that we are creating the most accessible place for our associates, and to ensure that that is also reflected in how we customer face as well, right? So it's a pretty wide range of responsibility, but primarily I think it is to be an advocate and an enabler to those who are actually engaged in the more tactical work.
Yeah, thank you for that, Albert. And I think some of what you touched upon, that's why this work is so difficult, right? It's why defining what belonging means is so hard, because it's not one thing to one person. It's many things to many people, and you have to figure out how to create that space where everyone can show up in the way that they feel that they most belong.
Yeah.
So Bruce, you've talked a bit about your role as a leader already within the organization, and there are 2 projects that you shared with me kind of leading up to this that you had an opportunity to participate in that really increased that sense of belonging within our CARD organization. So can you share both of those with everybody today?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll even start by saying, as we know that our managers have a lot to do with how we feel at work, right? So I will say that I've had the privilege, the fortunate kind of opportunity to work with 2 really great leaders. The first leader, I consider her my professional partner, and then about 3 months ago, I have a new manager, and within, I would say, the first 5 minutes of our conversation, I kid you not, I said to him, I'm like, oh, I understand why you're good at your job, right? Just the empathy he showed, kind of just the reaffirmation, the empathy, he's like, I want to let you know that I understand the value of your role and what you're trying to do very quickly, right? And that is pretty important because I think what's really important about this belonging or creating an inclusive culture, it's most successful when it's bottom up, right? And it's a natural phenomenon. And that's what's weird about culture. You can't really control it. And I think on CARD Intelligence, we're lucky enough to have done a few things. First, I made a point to the leadership team a while back and said, we have a scaled data science organization of about 200 folks. That's a lot. That's a big team. And a lot of them are international. A lot of them, English is not their first language. I said, we have a goldmine of such interesting experiences on this team. And I said that, but at the same time, this is what happens. It's magic. It happens by itself. Someone had the idea of doing, there's a book called The Humans of New York. I don't know if people are familiar with it. They take a picture and they write a little bio. But we decided to do Humans of CARD Intelligence. And so this team of data scientists would go around and start interviewing our different teammates. And I remember reading one about this woman who, she's a data scientist, a leader at Capital One, and she's from this little teeny tiny village at the border of Mongolia and China, and it's got a lot of Korean influences. And I'm like, how did she get here? I'm working with this amazing woman, right? So just there's a gold mine of beautiful experiences that we don't even know that we're like touching every single day. And the other amazing thing that recently happened for Pride Month is that our DEI committee put together a Pride celebration. And like I said, the team is 200 people. So from that, we had a panel talking for Pride. I was on it, a few other of my colleagues were on it. But it was such a special space that was created because you had these folks that had never declared that they were out, suddenly appearing on a LGBTQ plus panel, talking about their experiences, talking about what just happened with the Supreme Court, talking about what happened back in Trump, and having this, again, senior data scientists say, my partner is a person of color, and I'm a cisgender white man, yes, from Germany, but I was so afraid for my spouse, right? And to hear that from people that you are on a team with, it's not theory anymore, right? It's people could see the effects of, Supreme Court decisions on their colleagues. And just to see the response from, folks that you have a professional relationship, and suddenly there's this window into, and I would say an LGBTQ plus window, right? A lens that you're actually seeing your colleagues through, was really impactful. And I was like, I thought it was cool because I was on the panel, but when I talked to the folks that were in the audience, they're like, that was an amazing panel because it was so personal, and these people are, right here with us, right? So there's a lot of things that I think companies sometimes are afraid to unpack, but it really does bring a team closer together, right?
And I think sometimes we overlook that, right?
Yeah.
We think about those of us who put these events on, who do these things, we're like, oh, it's just a panel conversation. It'll be great for a couple of folks. But I think we don't think about how much that is doing to create that sense of belonging, to allow us to get to know one another. And we are moving right along. So I'm gonna throw a little bit of a curveball, but nothing crazy. But Bruce, you and I talked a little bit about allyship earlier. So I wanna talk about this idea of allyship and what we as allies need to do to create more belonging for folks who are not like us. I heard a lot today around allyship as a verb and allyship as action, and that is something that I have strongly believed for a very long time, the more work that I did myself. I also know that I'm a white cisgender woman and I have a lot of privilege and that I need to do more. And that's what I heard today and what I'm learning again here at this summit. Yeah. I want each of you to either share, I'll let you go either way. What can you do as an ally for someone who is not like you? Or what do you need from an ally? What do you need from me and from people like me to help move belonging forward where we are?
First of all, allyship is such a powerful concept. Yes. And when you have an ally, when you have a schemer, when you have someone to help you, right?
I love it.
That is powerful. But number one, I think people maybe think they're more of an ally than people perceive. And I think that's really interesting, right? I occupy a different space, right? I'm a smaller human. I'm a person of color. I'm gay. So I think I get a little bit of an advantage in terms of I signal allyship a little bit more naturally, right? I listen and I operate the way I do. But I think people sometimes, what's interesting is as leaders, people are always watching. The team is always watching. Always, it's like kids, right? The kids are always watching their parents, and even you're doing things. So no matter what, your team is always looking at you and seeing what kind of a leader, a kind of a person, kind of a manager, a decision maker you are. And so they are perceiving things that sometimes as a leader, you're like, oh, I'm open. So I think the power of visible allyship is really hard, right, for a lot of folks. They don't realize that they're always on display. But I think that's really important. And we were talking outside. I think I was, in terms of being an ally, you can't just jump in and help, right? Because I read a lot of the New York Times, maybe too much. And I read this article, and it was about what to say in times of difficulty, if you have a friend that someone passed, and how do you comfort that friend? It can be an awkward thing. And she said, I have this framework, and she got it from when you are working with children, and how do you help a child that might be in a bad place. And she said, it's the 3 H's. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is an amazing framework for how to be an ally. And the 3 H's are, does this person need to be heard? Does this person need help? Or does this person just need a hug, right?
Nice.
And I love that, because sometimes we want to go into problem solving, right? Like, we're so trained to solve the problem. But sometimes people do not want you to solve their problem. Sometimes they just need an ear. They just need to complain, and then thank you very much, I've complained. Sometimes they need a hug, right? And you can ask that of someone, but sometimes when I'm listening to people, I will go through, who do I need to be in this situation? Does this person need to be heard? Does this person actually need help? Does this person need a hug, right? And it helps me know how to show up for that person. And it's a really powerful framework, and it's 3 H's, remember? Does this person need to be helped? Does this person need to be heard? Or does this person need a hug? And I think it's a really nice allyship framework.
Yeah, you mentioned it to me before, Bruce, and I'm already thinking about the ways to use it, and I will share I always need a hug. So, go.
If I'm thinking, I've had the distinct privilege of having a number of professional experiences, and one of those experiences actually was within government. And I identify as a cis male, and I was shopping around for my next gig. And prior to transitioning to that new job, I fell in step with a trans Black woman. And I was moved by her beauty, I was moved by her grace, I was moved by her intelligence. She was a fellow at the agency. In my role as the portfolio manager of the LGBT portfolio, had the privilege of interviewing her and learned about her plight. I knew about the data around our trans colleagues and the difficulty with which they found themselves often in finding employment. This woman happened to be deeply rooted in the space of DIB, but through nonprofit spaces. And I was looking for another job. And I was impressed. And I went to my boss. And I told my boss, I have found my replacement. And my replacement happens to be this woman, that this agency needs this human in this role. Because to your point, representation matters. Yes. Now, we landed the gig. She was hired for my old job, and we crossed paths. She purchased a Tesla a while ago, and we had lunch. And she was adamant about me driving her Tesla. And I was wondering,
it drives itself, right?
it drives itself, but I was trying to understand the significance behind this push for me to drive this car. I didn't drive it because, I didn't want to wreck it. But it dawned on me that it was out of a great deal of appreciation. She often says that had it not been for me creating the bridge, her her life probably would be a lot different. And so when I think of allyship, I think of allyship that way, right? Like, what can I do I mentioned earlier, we all have privilege to borrow and we all have privilege to lend. To lend my privilege in such a way that would create opportunity, life-changing, life-altering, life-saving opportunity for the next person. And I feel honored to call her my friend. I feel honored to call her my friend. My world expanded because I moved beyond my discomfort. I leveraged my voice, my power, my privilege to create opportunities for someone who wasn't like me.
And honestly, that's what makes a world of a difference in an ally. I need you to be there for me in a way that I can't tell you, right? I can't tell you what I need all the time. But if you see something that you feel like you can offer, just take those steps.
Word.
I am a strong believer that you can't just say, I'm an ally, and it's true. Someone in the community that you are an ally to has to believe that about you. And the only way you can get there is proving to those people that you're there for them even when they didn't realize they needed it.
Yep. Yep.
Love that. And I heard this morning on one of the panels, it was Chris Messiah said, leadership is something that is given. You can't say that you're a leader. If no one follows you, you're not a leader. And I'm going to put allyship in that same bucket, right? Someone has to agree that you are doing the things that you can do to truly demonstrate that allyship. So thank you all for working with me there and sharing that beautiful story, Albert.
And if I could just add one more thing, I think it's not just making opportunities for members of the community. I think it's also keeping awareness of what's going on in the world, right? So I pass as incredibly white, and there's not a person who would look at me and think that I'm Hawaiian. But if you know that I'm Hawaiian and you know that what's happening to Hawaii right now, and you take the time to check on me, I feel like you're there for me, right? And I'm okay, my family is safe, and now you know that, and I feel appreciated and valued, right? It's all about just keeping aware of what's going on and what could be impacting someone next to you and just checking in. You know, I didn't need anything, and that was super lucky of me. But if I had, I would have loved to be able to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Leah, I think sometimes in the allyship role, you wonder, like, does this person want to talk about this right now? But I will say, I have never regretted asking someone if they needed something. I've never regretted reaching out. I've only regretted not making that phone call or not sending that text.
Because, girl, I will tell you if I don't want to talk about it. I will.
Well, you know, I think in my vast history of friends and just being in roles I have, I think the two most powerful questions I've come across are what's going on in your world, right? It's just an open question. And the other thing, and my friend used this on me once, and I'm like, oh, that's such a good question, is just like, hey, what are you thinking right now? And there's such an invitation for this person to say what they want to say, but it does signal like, hey, it's, you know, I can see what's going on. Something's going on. Hey, what are you thinking right now? Or they're so powerful, right? In just opening things up in a non-obtrusive way. And it demonstrates that, hey, I'm thinking about you, and I know you're thinking about something. So tell me what you're thinking about right now.
Yeah, that question around what are you thinking about is moving, right? Because it forces the person that you're engaging to turn inward. You know, oftentimes when we are on the margins of society, we get caught up in just responding, right? And never taking the time to dig deep into our own interiority, to reflect, and to think about what we need, right? Because we're just such in the habit of just doing, performing, that question is a generative question because it forces us to pause and to think about and to take stock of where there are maybe some deficiencies, and to think about to be selfish enough. We give permission to an individual to be selfish, right? Like focus in that moment on you, like what do you need? What are you thinking? And that's a very powerful, powerful prompt.
Yeah, it's a good
It
question.
is. And the concept of belonging, because you see me and you're giving me that space to be a little bit selfish, I feel like you're there for me, right? I feel like I belong. I don't have to hide anything. If I don't want to talk about it, you're not going to be upset. But you didn't ask, are you okay? And I say, sure. You asked what I'm thinking, and I'm like, oh, shit.
Yes.
What am I
That part.
thinking?
Right.
So,
Okay.
All right. So I think we might be at the time that we take some questions from the audience. I think we're how we feel about that. So we have the wonderful Erin, our colleague, and who keeps us all straight, helping us work through straight and queer, helping us work through all of the questions that are coming in today. So we can take some in the crowd. We're going to take some from online too. So Erin, I pass it over to you. What are the people curious about?
Before I let you know what people are curious about, I want to encourage everyone to continue submitting questions in the app, or I see we have enough space for me to run around and bring the microphone to you if you want to stand up in a second here. But we had a couple of questions about belonging and BRG, ERG members that I want to weave together. I'm a BRG leader. In my day job on my team, I feel very accepted and like I belong. But I have BRG members who feel the opposite in their teams. As a leader, how do I best respond to this disparity? I know, Albert, you lead all of our BRGs and provide oversight. Leah, you're an amazing member of our out front leadership team. Welcome thoughts on that disparity from you.
I'll yield to.
sure. I would encourage that person to check in with their colleague and see if they want to find their community. When someone is unhappy in their day job, it's most often because those people aren't giving them what they need. And sometimes you can just have a job and feel like you belong at the company, and those can exist together. I can have a job where I just do my job, but what I'm really here for are those Slack messages with all the people in my BRG, right? And they're the ones who keep me going throughout the day, because I don't need to have that from my manager all the time, but I do want to have that from my colleagues and friends. And so if you can find, in my opinion, if you can find your people, if you can find the folks that make you feel like you belong, they can also give you the courage to approach your leadership team and your colleagues with what you need from them and see if you can get that from them. And then make a decision, because if you can't, you are welcome to leave, right? I mean, value yourself enough to go find the job that you want.
That's word. That's right. I'm thinking about my dear friend Caroline Wengo, who says that if who you are isn't appreciated where you are, don't change who you are, change where you are.
Yes.
And that's it. It's just a simple equation, right? And so go get your love somewhere else. There's hospitality somewhere else, FYI. So.
And we should acknowledge that is a hard thing. Like that, those are hard choices, right? But I think behind it is you are worth it. Like
You are.
who you are is important enough. Then where, like, right? So even though it's going to be hard, and it doesn't have to happen on a turn of a dime, right? But start identifying what is important to you, right? And I think we value ourselves, we value our experience. Go someplace where people really respect that.
Absolutely.
Yes, and I mean, last statement, and I would love to take other questions. A dear friend of mine at the company recently said that you can't define your own happiness by what your company can give you, and sometimes that's okay, right? If I want to leave the position I'm in because I'm not feeling as appreciated and like I belong as I want to, then separate yourself from that and do your job and find your people, right? Be comfortable with that separation until you can be strong or brave enough or self-aware enough of your own worth to go find them together.
Thank you, thank you. I think there are some hands in the crowd, Erin, if you feel like running around. You wore flats, so that's good.
Yes. Happy to run around. I'll take one over here if you just want to introduce yourself as you ask your question.
Hi, good evening. My name is Liz Garza. I'm an Air Force officer reservist. So happy to be here, as well as a DEIA consultant. I'm interested in finding out, I guess, from your experiences at Capital One, strategies to promote diversity and belonging so that they're synchronized in parallel, so that you can have an organization that's diverse and united instead of diverse and divided. And then my second part question, if we have time real quick, is just, Bruce, you all brought up so many brilliant points, but especially talking about, the panel and how in the Supreme Court decisions, and you see it, it's not just theory anymore. You see how it impacts your coworkers and your coworkers' families, right? So what do you think is a larger, infrastructure or framework from an engagement perspective to really act as a foundation for making that belonging, that engagement between departments, between demographic groups, kind of develop more organically, so we're not, falling into this habit of what we're comfortable with engaging with people who look like us, who think like us, who have similar sexual orientations, so that we're not afraid of engaging with people who are different than us. So it really reduces that amount of tribalism and affinity bias and operating in silos.
Yes. I would love to hear from the two of you on this, but I'll add just one quick thought, which is focusing energies on intersectional identities so that you're celebrating the diverse while still creating a feeling that everyone belongs, because I'm here for every part of you, right? All of who you are. I think at Capital One, we try incredibly hard, and we have an amazing team of BRG leaders across the enterprise. And we regularly work with each other, right, to bring someone in that represents 2, 3, 4 parts of our identities at once, so that I might resonate with 2 and you might resonate with 1, but someone maybe sees all 4.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important to celebrate the diversity of who you can be while still giving everyone a feeling that they belong, because we're here for all of them.
Yeah. I'm just thinking to eliminate the noise, work plan, coordinate across these dimensions, right? Like that is certainly going to contribute to the efficacy of the work that you do. I'm thinking about Booker T. Washington, who says that we could be as separate as 5 fingers on a hand, but a whole when it comes to all things, common to a mission, right? And so if we don't have clear guidance around what we're going after, then there's going to be a lot of noise. And so what we try to do, and it is very difficult because we find ourselves in a highly matrixed environment with people who are deeply passionate about the work and are often engaged in efforts that are decentralized and that may have impact, but could actually have greater impact if they were scaled at the enterprise level, right? And so what we do is we try to clarify what we're going after, to get buy-in, to ensure that they come along where they are, because where they are is in service to the organization, but oftentimes it's voluntary. It's side of desk. Our goal at the enterprise level is to help facilitate that kind of enterprise change that is going to be sustained over time and that is going to have the maximum impact. And so have a clear RACI, coordinate with the variety of entities across your organization, and work plan together.
Yeah. Bruce, anything you want to add?
I think just as Albert's talking about the enterprise level, I work really locally with the team. The team is 200 people, but I honestly believe it needs to come from the bottom up. So as a leader, I can try to start things and I can encourage, but I'm only gonna encourage when there's stuff starting to bubble up, because then I'm just forcing things, right? So there has to be a little bit of grumbling so I can activate that grumbling into action. And sometimes I'm not, even though I want to do something, I won't do anything until there's a grumble, right? Because it's really important that the culture is activated, else it looks like you're trying to like force things on people.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Erin, I think we have time for one more.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Des Tabato. I'm an engineer at Nissan up in the Metro Detroit area. I just had a quick question for y'all. So I'm the acting president of our like queer BRG. And it's been kind of in a weird state, basically, you know, with COVID. I started during COVID, mostly remote. This is kind of like a general question, I guess. I find, and this might be the case for like some other people maybe in this room, that I have a hard time, I have all these ambitions that I want to do, basically, and create that belonging space, but balancing it with my like main position can be like a challenge. So I was wondering if you guys had any tips or any recommendations for me as we go about that. So thank you.
Yes, yeah. I would say top 2 recommendations in that, and we've all been there, right? I mean, I think you mentioned it, it's a side of desk job. I have a full career that Capital One pays me for, and then I do all of this because I love it. And it's hard to find that time and not let either one drop lower because they're both so important to me. So 2 recommendations I would have. Find a team of people that can all give just a little bit, because if you find people that you can say, you know, and I was just having this conversation with a colleague, I don't have it right now, right? I'm busy, I'm slammed at work, I really wanna get this program or event together, but I don't have it. Can you step in? And then when you don't have it, I got you, right? So build a community that can, and like play on each other's strengths and find ways for you to all contribute 20%, and then you've got 100% before you know it, right? And then the other thing I would say is like, we're all very passionate and ambitious, right? That's why we're here. You have to make sure that you really prioritize what you wanna focus on. Take it, put a number on it, even arbitrarily, create a scale, put a number on it, and then pull the top 5 and say, how do I accomplish this? And how do these impact my associates, my colleagues, instead of trying to do all of these and having minimal impact? So that would be my recommendation.
I think one thing I'll add to that too, Leigh, is I know in that leadership role, you'll often have people come to you that say, it would be great if we did this, right? And I think you need to have the authority and the sense of yourself to say, that is a great idea. Would you run with it, right? Don't be afraid to ask the person with the idea to do the work to make it happen.
Yeah. And the work that is their responsibility,
Yep.
right? Do not fall into the trap of doing HR's job, right? Like, don't fall into the trap of doing, you know, benefits job, right? Your responsibility, to Bruce's point, is to create the rumble, right? And leverage the power that you have in such a way that you are investing in your membership through development, through creating culture, belonging, and things of that sort. And leave all of the enterprise work to the people that we pay to do that. Don't let them off the hook.
Thank you all. These were really great questions. I know that we didn't get to them all. If you see us in the hall, talk to us. We'll talk to you more. Any of the Capital One folks, we all have some fun things to say. I am going to wrap us up because we were the only thing between you and happy hour. And we thank you for joining us this evening. But we wanted to give you takeaways and actionable tools, right? So I encourage you to take a look in the app. We did upload just a document with a couple of things that we found poignant that we thought might help as you figure out how you want to drive this work where you are. And a couple of the points that I heard from you folks today are around belonging's multifaceted. It's the spaces we show up in, it's the colleagues we interact with, and it's the comfort and that safety to be. Each of us plays a role in creating that belonging in our organization, whether we are a leader, whether we are an associate, or wherever we sit. We can create that sense of belonging for somebody else. So figure out what that means. Figure out how you show up and figure out what it is that you need. Belonging isn't just nice to have. companies need to be thinking about this seriously. When your employees feel like they belong, they're gonna work harder for you, and it's gonna impact that bottom line. So it's not just something that people are talking about, like, wouldn't it be great? And Albert, this comes from our very first conversation, that the word is belonging. It's a continuous process. To belong is to grow. We have to do the work. We have to understand that no place is perfect, and we need to invest in the opportunities to improve. Colleagues, I leave you with 19 seconds to share anything that we didn't cover.
I have one thing I'm very passionate about, likely to the irritation of many folks I work with, and I'll take it all day. Language is so important, and there are so many assumptions that we all make when interacting with other humans all the time. And I just want to challenge you to really acknowledge that you don't know anything about that person, no matter what you see. So change your language, remove pronouns, remove ableism, remove it, because you have no idea what that person is. And by putting language on them that they might not want, you are making them feel excluded. Be very aware of how your stories and your language can impact others, and take a step back and really think about what you've just said.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful place to close.
Thank you.
Thanks.